Hello everyone, hope you are doing well. Today I am going to provide you the second part of War of Fire and Fortune novel. Hope you will like it. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel, a like to the video, and let's get started.
Chapter 6, Emmeline. The air hung heavy with the scent of smoke and sweat. My eyes scanned the rows of tents, searching for Atreya's distinctive bigger pavilion. Emrys and Betos screeched overhead. Scouting the mountains together to save the rebellion time, I tapped the tent before entering. I lifted the flap and Atreya's face appeared, her dark hair glinting in the dim light. "Come in," she said, standing up, gripping the edges of her desk, looking up from the papers strewn over the wood. I ducked inside, blinking as my eyes adjusted to the lighting. Maps and scrolls littered every surface. Did she know about Cade? She was the leader of the rebellion, so I'd assumed Atreya knew everything. But then why had she said nothing? If Atreya had known all along, what else had she been keeping from me? What other secrets were buried beneath her calm, calculating exterior? I couldn't move forward without knowing. My throat tightened as I forced the question out, my voice trembling under the strain of it. "Did you know about Crow? All this time?" She hesitated, her lips pressing into a thin line before she answered, "Yes." My stomach churned, the fragile hope I hadn't even realized I was clinging to shattering in an instant. Of course she knew. That was who Atreya was, always a step ahead, always holding her cards close to her chest. "How much do you know?" I demanded, the words sharp and raw, laced with the anger and betrayal boiling inside me from everyone I thought I knew. She sighed, her eyes softening as though she knew how much her answer would hurt. "I know about Crow being Cade," she admitted, her voice quiet but steady. "I knew about your mating bond long before you got here." Her voice was quieter now. "And—" she hesitated, glancing at me like she was bracing for my reaction. "It seems like you haven't solidified it yet." She paused, taking a step closer. "And I know about Ace." The apology in her eyes was undeniable. Although him being left behind, that was never supposed to happen. It wasn't part of the plan. "You knew all of this," I whispered, my voice quivering, "and you didn't say anything?" "Who else knew?" Her shoulders sagged. "I didn't want to hurt you," she said softly. "None of us did, but you knowing could have put everything at risk." We couldn't risk Valos finding out the truth. The only way to keep the information from spreading was to keep it to ourselves. To keep you in the dark, and it's a good thing we did, considering when he had you, he was able to get into your head somehow. "Who else knew?" I asked again, my seconds. The answer was like a blow to the gut. Shay and Baron. Shay had become one of my closest friends, yet she'd harbored so much from me. What was the plan, exactly? My words were heavy with frustration and heartbreak. Rhett was going to hollow us there, and Ace would get you out, she explained, but I cut her off. "Rhett has shadows too?" I guess it made sense with them being brothers, but fuck, another thing I didn't know. "Yes, they are both half Celestial Phi. After Ace got you out, Rhett would hollow you back. Cade wasn't supposed to tell you his true identity yet. He was supposed to get you to the catacombs while we created a battle for a distraction. After that, he was supposed to join the front lines with his father and Rhett so that they looked united in the face of their enemies. But Cade didn't leave you there to wait for Ace because he told you the truth, and then Vala showed up. Vala finding the catacombs through us. We had to improvise, and her voice broke again, softer now. "I'm sorry about Ace. I truly am." The words hung in the air, but they did nothing to soothe the fire raging inside me. "You improvised, and Ace paid the price," I summed up bitterly. "He knew the risks, and he went in willingly. Until we can figure out what Valos wants with you, I suggest you pull yourself together and start training. You still need to master Earth." "We've been discussing our next move," Atreya said, gesturing to the documents spread before her. I'm planning a journey to Woodhaven during Aster's son's coronation. I need to secure an alliance with their new king if we hope to stand a chance against Ember. Don't they already help us? Yes, but I need more men. The previous king wasn't very fond of my ideas. And you think the new king will be? Atreya's eyes met mine, a flicker of uncertainty passing through them. He doesn't have a choice. The alternative is too dire to contemplate. Atreya continued, her voice softening as she changed the subject. I think it would be best if you continued your training. It could be a good distraction, and it will certainly help us in the future as all of this unfolds. I nodded, grateful for something to focus on besides the ache in my heart. You're right. Good, Atreya said, a hint of relief in her voice. Luana can help you. I left Atreya's tent without another word, my mind whirling. The camp bustled around me, but I barely noticed as I made my way to Luana's tent. I found her sitting outside it, her shoulders slumped and her eyes red-rimmed. My heart ached at the sight of her grief. Luana, I said softly, not wanting to startle her. She looked up, and I saw the tracks of tears on her cheeks. Hey, she whispered, her voice hoarse. I sat beside her, unsure what to say. How did you comfort someone when your own heart was breaking? I was just thinking about Ace, Luana started, a sad smile playing on her lips. Reminiscing about when he tried to help me put the fire out in the food tent, and he used his wind and all it did was fan the flames. She smiled painfully, and a laugh bubbled up from my chest. There was one time he shoved me out of a tree to teach me how to airbend. We shared a look, and for a moment the grief lifted, replaced by the warmth of shared memories. I miss him, Luana said softly. I nodded, feeling the same ache. Luana, I was wondering if you'd be willing to train me in earthbending. Atreya thinks it would be good for me to finish mastering the elements, and it would keep both of us busy until Ace returns, I requested. Refusing to believe anything else, Luana's eyes lit up, a spark of life returning to them. It would be my honor. She reached out to squeeze my hand. When do you want to start? I met her gaze. Now. Chapter 7, Cade, asterisk, and melted into the shadows, slipping through the cracks of stone and iron to materialize inside Ace's dank cell. The stench of blood and decay assaulted my senses every time I came down here, but I pushed it aside, focusing on his figure huddled in the corner. Rise and shine, I called softly, setting down the bundle I carried. I come bearing gifts. Ace stirred, raising his head. Even in the dim light, I could see the improvement in his condition from Vala's most recent assault. His face had regained some color, the bruises fading to a sickly yellow and green. Good. Vala would be returning soon, and he needed his strength. Back again so soon? Ace grunted with the movement of his hands, but held a hint of his usual sarcasm. I'm beginning to think you enjoy my company. I snorted, kneeling beside him to inspect his wounds. Ah, yes. Can't have a proper rival if he's half dead, can we? I quipped, and Ace winced as I prodded a particularly nasty gash. I knew it, he signed, and I uncorked a vial of salve, the pungent herbal scent filling the air. Now hold still. This will sting. Ace hissed through clenched teeth as I applied the medicine, but he didn't pull away. I worked in silence for a few moments, my thoughts churning. How long could I keep this up? It had been a little over a month now. How long would Vala keep him alive? I knew he would be good leverage for Emmeline, but other than that, Vala didn't need him for anything. That she hadn't been back in a few days caused concern. Either she'd forgotten about him or what was coming next was going to be her worst yet. You know, Ace sighed suddenly, you don't do a good job at hiding your thoughts, Prince. What's on your mind? I stiffened, my hands faltering for a moment. Vala hasn't come back for a while. I'm worried about what she plans to do with you next. There was no sense in hiding my worries. Ace was probably thinking some of the same things I was. And we had talked a lot to each other these past few weeks while I tended to him. Whatever she does, we'll deal with it when it comes. I'm not backing out now. Have you discovered anything new? Not yet, but something keeps snagging on my memory. When Emmeline lost control, there was a woman I'd never seen before at my father's side. I feel she is involved somehow. Asterisk, how so? You think she's a celestial fae like you? Maybe, but I don't know why a celestial fae would want to help my father's cause. Everyone wants this war over just as much as the next person. What reason would a celestial fae have to help him? What leverage could he possibly have? Have you never gotten into your father's head? Ace asked. Why haven't you ended this yourself? Kill him with his own nightmares? I can only imagine the things in his mind. I have tried, Ace. When I returned from the Western Wyverns, I finally worked up the courage to try, and it didn't work. My father has some kind of protection placed on himself. I'm assuming he wanted to be sure his mind was impenetrable the moment a rebellion rose against him. He was prepared. He must have used witches or some other form of spell or enchantment to keep his mind and body safe. Well, that's a start. Try to figure out what's keeping you out, and maybe we can figure out how to undo it. Take care of the problem from the source. And look for that fae. She might open up to you if you knew why she was helping your father. I have looked for her, but I haven't been able to find her. Well, try harder. I rolled my eyes and gathered up the medicine and empty dishes. I felt a strange warmth in my chest. Talking things out with Ace, since I was away from Emmeline, always eased my nerves. Same time tomorrow? Ace asked as I melted back into the shadows. I paused, looking back at him. It's a date. Try not to die before then, would you? His laughter followed me as I slipped away through my hollow. Asterisk. Chapter 8, Ace. I winced as I shifted on the cold stone floor, my bones still aching despite the past few weeks of Cade's attentive care. He had surprised me. He was at odds with everything I'd been taught about our enemies. I found myself warming to him against my better judgment. Closing my eyes, I let myself indulge in a daydream. It was something that had gotten me through the days of torment. Luana and I, hand in hand, strolling through the grand halls of the Ember Palace. Cade and Emmeline, as Emperor and Empress, welcoming us with open arms. A world at peace, the bitter war between our peoples finally laid to rest. But would Emmeline even want such power? The sister I'd known back in our quiet corner of Osperia would have balked at the idea. Then again, so much had changed. The harsh scrape of metal on metal shattered my thoughts. My eyes snapped open as the dungeon door groaned on its hinges. I didn't need to look to know who it was. Vala's presence sent ice crawling down my spine. Time seemed to slow as she sauntered toward my cell, each click of her heels echoing ominously. Her fingers trailed along the iron bars, a mocking caress that made my skin crawl. Well, well, she purred, her voice dripping with false sweetness. Look who's all healed up and ready for more fun. She didn't know about Cade helping me. I assumed she thought I was healing on my own. I gritted my teeth, refusing to give her the satisfaction of a response. My heart pounded as a single thought consumed me. Would this be the day she finally finished what she'd started? I could hear my own ragged breathing, see the anticipation glittering in Vala's eyes. Then, with a resounding clang that made me flinch, she unlocked my cell door. You look good, perfectly breakable again, Vala said, her eyes roving over me like a predator sizing up its prey. I lifted my chin defiantly, determined not to show weakness. Her smirk only widened, her fist suddenly connecting with my gut. The air rushed from my lungs as I folded forward. Vala leaned in close, her breath hot against my ear. I think I'm going to use you as my workout dummy today, she whispered. And when you're nothing but a bloody, bruised mess, I'll finish you off and leave you to rot in this cell. My stomach churned at her words, but it was her next threat that made my blood run cold. Then, I'm going to cut off your ears and send them to your dear peacebringer of a sister. Asterisk rage exploded through me. I lunged forward and snarled, straining against my chains. Vala giggled, a sound that chilled me to my core. There it is. That light that's still inside you. Her eyes gleamed with malice. I'm going to extinguish it. Another punch landed, then another. My hands, pinned above my head, were useless to block the onslaught. The metallic taste of blood filled my mouth as her fists connected again and again. Is this how I would die? I wondered, my thoughts hazy with pain. Not in battle, but chained and helpless. Kicks joined the punches, each impact sending shockwaves of agony through my battered body. I lost track of time, lost in a haze of pain and the desperate need to endure. Then I heard it. The distinctive crack of a whip being unfurled. Please, not again. Crack, 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 the whip sang its vicious song, each lash biting deep into my flesh. I clenched my jaw, determined not to give Vala the satisfaction of hearing me scream. Fire blazed across my back, my chest, my arms, anywhere her cruel instrument could reach. So stubborn, Vala taunted, her breath ragged from exertion. Let's see how long that lasts. Crack, crack. The world narrowed to nothing but pain and the rhythmic snap of the leather against my skin. My ears rang, drowning out everything but the sound of my own labored breathing. I retreated into myself, desperately searching for something, anything to cling to. Luena's face swam before my mind's eye. Hold on, I told myself, for her, for home, while you're being a bore. Vala's voice cut through the fog. Time for something new, I think. I forced my eyes open, watching warily as she set aside the bloodied whip. What new torment did she have planned? Tell me, Ace, she purred, producing a wicked-looking knife. How attached are you to your fingers? She must have enjoyed the slight drop of my mask because her laugh was cruel. I think I'll start with the rest of you first, like a warm-up. The knife glinted as she approached. I tried to pull away, but there was nowhere to go. The first cut was shallow teasing, then deeper, and deeper, asterisk. I lost track of what she did after that. Cutting, burning, twisting bone. On and on it went, until I couldn't tell where one pain ended and another began. My world became a maze of agony I couldn't escape, each new torment blurring into the next. Was I even still whole? I couldn't be sure, asterisk. I was gasping, hanging limply by my chains as Vala circled me like a hungry cat. Each labored breath sent waves of anguish through my battered body. She trailed her long, polished nails along the sensitive edges of my wings, sending involuntary shudders through me, asterisk. I was gasping, hanging limply by my chains as Vala circled me like a hungry cat. Each labored breath sent waves of anguish through my battered body. She trailed her long, polished nails along the sensitive edges of my wings, sending involuntary shudders through me, asterisk. Chapter 9, Shay. The wind whipped through my braids as Emerus soared through the inky night sky. My hands gripped her scales, cool and smooth, beneath my fingers. Behind me, I felt Atreya's steady presence, her arms wrapped around my waist. How are you feeling? Atreya's voice carried over the rush of air. My hand drifted to my stomach. Fine. Just wish Baron could be here. Leaving him behind had been harder than I'd anticipated after being apart for so long before this. His fierce protectiveness had only intensified since learning of the pregnancy. But duty called, and the rebellion needed a leader in our absence. I felt better knowing a dragon was helping guard them while we were away, though. Beatus had been running around with Emerus since Emmeline had returned, so when I took Emerus, he would stay behind and keep watch. We dove into a bank of clouds, the mist cool against my skin, When we emerged, the vast expanse of Woodhaven spread out below. Forests blanketed the lower slopes, a sea of shadowy green. "We're getting close," I murmured. Atreya's grip tightened. "Remember, we can't risk being seen. Stay in the clouds as much as possible." I nodded, guiding Emerus higher. We skimmed just beneath the cloud cover, catching glimpses of the terrain below. A river snaked through a valley, its surface black as obsidian. "Do you think they'll grant our request?" I asked, unable to keep the uncertainty from my voice. Atreya was quiet for a moment. "They have to," she finally said. "For all our sakes." I swallowed hard, pushing down my doubts. We had come too far to turn back empty-handed. Emerus banked sharply, and I caught a fleeting glimpse of the capital city nestled in a valley below in the distance. Soon we would land and continue on foot. I didn't want to get too close with Emerus. "Have you spoken to Emmeline yet?" Atreya asked from behind me, her voice barely audible over the rush of wind. Asterisk, I tensed, my hands tightening on Emerus's scales. The question I'd been dreading. "No, not yet," I replied, keeping my eyes fixed on the sky. Emmeline deserved to know the truth, all of it. But how could I face her after keeping such secrets? I sensed Atreya's hesitation, could almost feel the unspoken words hanging between us. There was so much more to say, so many truths still hidden. Emerus rumbled beneath me, sensing my unease. I stroked her neck, drawing comfort from her warmth. Atreya's voice cut through my swirling thoughts. "I'd steer clear for a little while. She knows that we knew about Cade. She needs time to cool down," she said. My stomach dropped. Well, one secret was out. I swallowed hard, trying to keep my voice steady as I asked, "Who told her?" She came to my tent asking questions. I told her the truth, as there was no need to hide it any longer. Cade had already told her they were mates and that he was Crow. My heart thudded in my chest. Atreya's honesty was both admirable and terrifying. I knew the weight of the secrets we carried, the potential for devastation if they were revealed at the wrong moment. I twisted in my seat, fighting against the rushing air to look back at Atreya. "Did you tell her everything?" The wind tousled my box braids, whipping them around my face as I struggled to catch Atreya's eyes. "No, not everything," she said, her voice barely audible over the rush of wind. "She only knows about Cade and Rhett, and that we knew that her and Cade were mates, and that he and Rhett have been working with us against Ember. I didn't tell her anything else." And she didn't ask anything more. "When do you plan on revealing it all?" I could see the conflict on Atreya's face, the same struggle I felt within myself. How much truth could we afford to share? Atreya's jaw tightened, her eyes scanning the horizon as if searching for answers in the vast expanse of sky. "She'll find out when the time is right." "Everyone will," she answered, her voice carrying a mix of determination and weariness. "Right now, we need to remain united. I don't know what Valis's next move is, but I have a feeling it isn't going to be good, and we need to be ready." I nodded, but the thought of keeping things from everyone didn't settle my unease. All the lives depending on us pressed down on my shoulders, and I knew Atreya was right. The truth would come out eventually. We were close now, too close for comfort. I leaned forward, pressing my body against Emerus's warm scales. "Time to go down, girl," I whispered, guiding her into a steep dive. The wind whipped at my face as we plummeted. As we neared the ground, I cast a wary glance toward the capital. The thought of Ember soldiers potentially lurking in the shadows sent a shiver through me. We couldn't risk being seen, not now. Emerus landed with a soft thud, her massive body absorbing the impact. Atreya and I slid off her back, our legs bending to cushion our fall. The forest floor was soft beneath our feet. I turned to face Emerus. She took a step toward me, clearly intent on following. "No." I shook my head, fighting the urge to embrace her. "I need you to stay back." We will be in the capital for at least a day, maybe two. I will call for you when we are finished, and you can meet us here. I gestured to the dense woods surrounding us, the thick canopy perfect for concealing a dragon. Emerys narrowed her bright yellow eyes. A puff of smoke escaped her nostrils, enveloping me in a cloud that smelled of ash and milkweed roses. The scent hit me like a blow to the chest, memories of simpler times flooding my mind. Days spent in sun-dappled meadows, before the weight of rebellion and impending motherhood rested on my shoulders. I inhaled deeply, feeling my racing heart slow. Emerys lowered her massive head, gently nudging my swollen belly with her snout. I had gotten a lot bigger this past month. A lump formed in my throat. I know, I whispered, running my hand along her scales. I promise I'll be careful. I pressed my forehead against her angular head, closing my eyes for a brief moment. The connection between us thrummed like a living thing. I'll be back soon, I promised, stepping away. Each movement felt like I was tearing myself in two. Emerys and I had been inseparable these past few months. On top of the distance from Baron, with my pregnancy emotions, nothing felt easy anymore when it came to either of them. I walked toward Atreya, who waited with poorly concealed impatience, and left Emerys with one last look over my shoulder, asterisk. I held my breath as Prince Thaldric knelt before his father, King Aster, on the grand balcony of their castle. The ancient crown of Woodhaven, wrought from gold vines and shimmering gemstones, hovered above the young prince's bowed head. The crown descended, settling onto Thaldric's dark curls. The glint of gold looked even more vibrant against his dark brown skin. He rose, shoulders back, holding his chin high. The crowd erupted in deafening cheers. My people. Thaldric's voice rang out, silencing the masses. I vow to lead with strength, to protect our lands and bring prosperity to all. Woodhaven shall flourish under my reign. More cheers as he turned to go inside his home. Beside me, Atreya's lips tightened with determination. Her hand gripped my arm. It's time. We must move. We pushed through the jubilant throng of people. Guards blocked our path to the palace as we approached, but Atreya lifted her chin. I am Atreya, leader of the rebellion. We demand an audience with King Thaldric. The guards exchanged glances, then stepped aside. I wouldn't stand in Atreya's way either. We entered the grand hall, leaving the celebrations behind. But faint echoes of music and laughter still reached us through the thick stone walls. I gaped at the breathtaking beauty around us. Every surface was adorned with intricate etchings, swirling vines, majestic trees, woodland creatures. The very walls seemed alive. Columns of stone stretched toward vaulted ceilings, while ornate archways led to shadowed corridors. It's magnificent, I whispered. Atreya nodded. The Earth Dryads are truly master craftsmen. We approached a set of imposing double doors, their surfaces carved with scenes of ancient battles. My pulse quickened as they slowly opened, revealing the grand throne room. King Thaldric stood with his parents, resplendent in his coronation finery. A cluster of councilmen hovered nearby, their faces a mix of curiosity and concern. As we entered, the room fell into eerie silence. Thaldric's father, Aster, locked eyes with Atreya. His welcoming smile crumbled into a frown, lines of worry etching themselves across his brow. With a curt gesture, he dismissed the councilmen, who scurried from the room like unwanted bugs. I swallowed hard, fighting the urge to fidget under the royal family's scrutiny. Atreya, as always, stood tall and unwavering. Aster broke the tense silence, anger in his tone. Atreya, this couldn't have waited until after my son's big day. Thaldric stepped forward, placing his steadying hand on his father's arm. His youthful face was a mask of regal calm, but I caught a flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. What must it be like, I wondered, to bear the weight of a kingdom? Sure, I understood what it meant to lead people when Baron and I had been on the Espian Islands. Our people had looked to us but an entire kingdom. I couldn't imagine, father, Thaldric murmured, gentle warning in his tone. Atreya's eyes flashed with dangerous intensity. Unfortunately, no, she said. I am trying to ensure there will be a future for your son to rule it all. I flinched at her bluntness, casting a quick glance in her direction. Even for Atreya, that was bold. The air in the throne room seemed to thicken. Aster's face darkened, his jaw clenching. Surely he already knew why we were here. I braced myself for an explosion of royal anger, but Thaldric intervened before his father could speak. It is all right, father, the young king said. His smile was tight, not quite reaching his eyes. I had a feeling she would be coming. My eyebrows shot up in surprise. Thaldric had known? Atreya broke the tension, bowing with the grace of a royal. Her movements were fluid, practiced a queen in her own right. She knew how to rule and navigate politics. Thaldric would have his work cut out for him. Atreya didn't back down easily, not after all she'd been through to get this far. I watched her, marveling at how she could shift from battle-hardened leader to diplomat in the blink of an eye. Your Majesty, she said, her voice rich with respect as she addressed Thaldric. I apologize for the abruptness of our arrival, but the matter at hand brooks no delay. I suppressed a smirk. I'd witnessed Atreya outmaneuver countless opponents, both on the battlefield and in the political arena. She ruled our ragtag rebellion with an iron will and razor-sharp intellect that rivaled any monarch. Poor Thaldric, I thought. He had no idea what he was up against. The young king nodded, his expression guarded. Follow me, he said, gesturing toward a hallway. We can speak more freely in private. Aster and his wife flanked Thaldric, their steps measured and regal. I noticed the former king's hand twitch, as if longing to guide his son. Old habits, I supposed, died hard. Thaldric was a king now. He would have to make his own decisions. We reached a new set of ornate double doors. Thaldric pushed them open, revealing a smaller chamber beyond. As we filed in, I caught Atreya's eye. The determined set of her jaw told me everything I needed to know. She wouldn't leave without getting what she'd come for, no matter the cost. Thaldric moved purposefully to the head of the polished stone table dominating the room. The crown glinted atop his head, a constant reminder of the weight he now carried. His parents took their places to his left, their faces etched with concern. Atreya and I settled into the chairs to his right. If you're here for more soldiers, I do not have them to give, Thaldric said, his voice carrying the authoritative tone of a newly crowned king. So his father had told him about Atreya's wants before he'd taken the crown. Atreya leaned forward. Understandable, she replied, her voice smooth as silk. But the kind of soldiers I want are not men. Thaldric cocked his head curiously, brows furrowing as he processed her words. But before he could respond, his father Aster let out a heavy breath. Not this again. What had Atreya proposed before that could elicit such a reaction from the former king? Thaldric's gaze darted between his father and Atreya, confusion etched across his features. Not what again? He asked. I don't want men. They should be here serving you. I want to use golems as soldiers. The words hung in the air. Golems? My mind reeled, struggling to process the implications. Those gentle earth creatures were crafted for peace and service. To thrust into the brutality of war? It seemed impossible, sacrilegious even. It was against the Earth Dryad's customs to use them for such a thing. I stared at Atreya, searching her face for any sign of doubt or hesitation. There was none. Her jaw was set, eyes blazing. This was no idle suggestion. She had clearly thought this through. More than once, since Aster already knew about it, Asterisk part of me admired her audacity, her willingness to push boundaries in pursuit of winning this war. But another part recoiled at the idea of corrupting something so pure. The Earth Dryads cherished their golems, treated them as gifts. To weaponize them, it felt like a betrayal of everything they stood for, but as my initial shock faded, a small voice in the back of my mind knew the strategic brilliance of this. Golems were strong, tireless, and most crucially expendable. They could be destroyed without leaving grieving families behind. And since they were created to serve, was this not simply another form of service? Before I could fully grapple with my conflicting emotions, Aster's voice rumbled through the room. I told you before, Atreya, that I won't condone the misuse of golems. His eyes flashed with barely contained anger. It's disrespectful, not only to them, but to our people. Atreya's eyes narrowed, and I told you before that sacrifices must be made to win this war. She paused, her eyes sliding from Aster to his son. And now, with all due respect, Aster, I'm not here to speak to you. I'm here to speak with the King of Woodhaven. My stomach twisted. Fuck. The man had only been off his throne for maybe an hour. The challenge in her words was unmistakable. I watched Thaldric, searching his face for any hint of what he might be thinking as his father fumed in his chair. He had remained silent until now, his eyes darting between his father and Atreya. Thaldric leaned forward, his newly crowned head tilted in curiosity. What are you planning that would require an army of golems? He asked, his voice steady. Ember is going to invade Woodhaven again, she declared. It isn't a matter of if, but when. You all know this, and yet you haven't done anything to prepare for it other than raise your walls. Valos is smart, calculated. The next time he comes for you, he will be ready to face the Earthbenders in a new way. He will take down your walls and steal your throne. A chill ran down my spine. I'd seen firsthand the devastation Ember's armies could wreak. I'd like to start building our defense now, Atreya continued, so that we are prepared and will have a backup plan if either of our armies fall. I watched Thaldric closely, noting the slight widening of his eyes, the almost imperceptible tightening of his jaw. He was young, but not naive. The burden of his new crown seemed to settle more heavily on his brow with each passing moment. Atreya pressed on, her voice gaining strength. I know I have been building the rebellion for a long time, and I have built my numbers high, but even I'm not stupid enough to think that we could face Vala's armies head-on. Ember outnumbers us, they always have, and I feel having the golems will be the last thing they ever expect because of the process of making them. The room fell silent. I could almost hear the gears turning in Thaldric's mind as he studied Atreya, weighing her words against a lifetime of tradition. To create a golem, you needed two things: an earthbender to create the form and a witch willing to help with an enchantment spell to bring it to life. We had witches in the rebellion, but the amount of time it would take to create an army would be weeks, months even. Not to mention the energy required. Suddenly, Aster's voice cut through the tension. You're not considering this, are you, son? I held my breath. The fate of Woodhaven, perhaps of all Asperia, hung on Thaldric's next words. Father, Thaldric began. I don't like the sound of it either, but I don't want this war to carry on for another century. I want my reign to bring peace to our people. Our people do have peace. Aster lost control of his temper then, but his son didn't back down. Behind walls and lines of soldiers isn't peace, father. It is only an illusion of safety. This war is far from over. How many more men have to be ambushed? How many more camps or small villages filled with mothers and fathers and children will be destroyed while we continue to hide behind our walls of stone and false security? He reasoned. Aster's face was a mask of concern, his lips pressed into a thin line. Thaldric seemed to grow taller, his shoulders squaring. After what felt like an eternity, Thaldric tore his gaze away from his father. He turned to face Atreya, his expression set with determination that seemed to age him beyond his years. Asterisk. I'll do it, Baldric declared. I'll give you golems. Chapter 10, Emmeline. The earth rumbled beneath my feet as I flung another boulder at Luana, sweat dripping down my face. My lungs burned, desperate for air. We'd been at this for hours, day after day, and I was reaching my limit. Luana dodged effortlessly, sending a barrage of rocks hurtling back at me. I raised a wall, barely blocking them in time. My arms trembled with the effort. Again, Luana barked. You're still too slow, Emmeline. Feel the earth. Become one with it and move it. I gritted my teeth, frustration boiling inside me. Earthbending felt clunky, unnatural. Not like water, which flowed through me as easily as the blood in my veins. Water was an extension of myself. But earth? It was a stubborn beast I had to wrestle into submission. I hurled the wall I had made to her, and it flew true, but Luana batted it away like an annoying bug. Pathetic, she spat. Is this the best you can do? I'm trying, I growled, readying my stance again. Try harder. As I prepared another attack, I thought about how things had been going. It had been a little a month, and Cade hadn't come back. Ace was gone. My relationship with Shay had been rocky. Anger flared then. Nothing had felt right since I'd learned the truth of it all. I decided to lean into that anger, lies, so many lies. From Cade, from Shay, from everyone I'd trusted. The rage that had been simmering under my skin finally threatened to boil over, and I let it dot. How dare they? How fucking dare they keep the truth from me? Cade manipulated me. Shay lied to me. Ace was gone. I let out a scream. The ground shook violently, fissures spiderwebbing in all directions. Boulders ripped themselves from the earth, hovering around me in a deadly orbit. For a moment, Luana's eyes widened in surprise. Then a slow, satisfied smile spread across her face. Now we're getting somewhere, she purred. Asterisk, I didn't relish her approval. My anger wasn't for her benefit. It was raw, all-consuming, and directed at everyone who'd betrayed me. But as quickly as it had come, it drained away, leaving a hollow ache behind. Thoughts of Ace flooded my mind, and the boulders crashed to the ground. I should have been faster. I shouldn't have left him there. My concentration shattered completely. Damn the mother, Ace. I'm done for the day, I whispered, trying to hide the crack in my voice. I was so angry, but it was shrouded in grief. Luana's brow furrowed. What do you mean? We were making some great progress, Emmeline. We can practice more tomorrow, I stated, ignoring her question. I didn't mean to sound so harsh. If anything, Luana was Ace's mate. I should be kinder. She out of everyone would understand what I was going through. I'm sorry, I muttered, running a hand down my face. Emmeline, you can talk to me? Luana's voice soft-dot my eyes lined with tears, but I refused to let them fall. Refused to show weakness when I needed to be at my strongest. For Ace, for the world. But everything felt wrong without Ace here. I knew what he was enduring, and I had only been in Vala's clutches for a few days. It had been too long since Cade had gotten me out of Ember. The thought of the torment Ace was going through brought me to my knees. Luana walked over to me and sat down next to me in the dirt. He's there, I choked out. He's there and I'm here and I can't. My words fell away as she pulled me into a hug. The moment she gripped me, a boulder-sized lump in my throat made it hard to breathe, to hold back the tears that had been simmering under the surface for so long. I know. Her voice was raw, and I felt the warmth of her tears drip on my shoulder. I know, and I don't have anything to say to help make that pain bearable. How could I go on with this training, this charade of normalcy, when he was trapped in a living nightmare? I'm done waiting, I resolved. My decision was made. Emmeline, Luana's voice sounded pleading, but it wouldn't stop me. No, I whirled on her. I'm going to get Ace, first thing in the morning. I'm not waiting anymore. Luana's eyes widened at my decision. He's endured enough, and we've been separated for too long. We should be preparing for this war together. He should be with his mate. With you. With us. Here, my voice cracked on the last word, but I pushed past it. This is wrong, I whispered, clutching my necklace. Everything feels wrong. I rose to my feet and helped Luana to hers. I'm done with everyone telling me it's all going to be okay. Nothing is okay with him and Bella's hands. I'm going to get him myself. Luana reached for me. Ace felt the same way when you were in the hands of Vala and when he went to try and save you. There were consequences for acting too soon, for thinking with his heart. Emmeline, please, I'm begging you to think this through. I jerked away from her touch. I have. It's all I've been thinking about from the moment I made it out of the catacombs in Ember. I'm going. Luana's face fell, but I was beyond caring. I strode away from her, giving her one last fleeting glance as I went to my tent. I'd leave before dawn, before the rebellion stirred awake. I'd call for Betos and together we'd fly to Ember. I'd either rescue Ace or burn the world trying. Asterisk, asterisk. Chapter 11, Vala, asterisk, my father had been silent, which was odd because over the years I'd seen him lash out more often than not. But this anger was different. It was cold, calculated, and focused. A few days ago, Cade had left to go to the Western Wyverns, which was good for him. I was sure being anywhere, but here was better for him after the years of torment Father had put him through. And it would have only gotten worse after the news Father had received yesterday. Willow and Mother had escaped, and apparently the Peacebringer wasn't Cade. It was a sky elf based on what Marlena had told him. A small part of me was happy about it. I'd seen the way my father treated my mother, and because of that, I strived to be everything he wanted. Strong, capable, loyal to a fault. Especially since being born 32 years prior to Cade meant for a long while, my father hadn't known if he would have an heir to his throne. So I worked twice as hard. I trained and trained and trained, learned to wield beyond my fire, and bent over backwards to be everything my father would have wanted in a son. And I'd done it all just to see the slightest twinkle of recognition in his eyes when he approved, even if it broke me. I would break as long as it meant he was proud. I moved through the palace. My nerves were raw today. The courtiers and servants who once slithered in droves and busied themselves now remained scarce. They understood as I did that today was not for eavesdropping, idle banter, or hope for favor. Today, all energies funneled toward the throne room, where my father was waiting for me, at the high corridor outside stretched before me, empty but for two silent guards. Neither met my eye. Every stride felt heavier than the last, as if I dragged not just myself, but the entire future behind me. When I reached the doors, the guards did not speak, did not even nod. They simply moved over as the double doors opened. I stepped through, and the cavernous hush swallowed me whole. There he sat. The man himself was the only living thing worthy of such a throne. My father. Hair as dark as the night sky, eyes the same amber all of his children shared. Skin drawn taut over a face that always seemed to be thinking. His hands rested on the armrest like he was completely at ease right now. There were guards in the room, 6 in total, arrayed like chess pieces along my periphery. I recognized none of them. Either his paranoia had multiplied overnight, or he'd replaced the old detail with men even more loyal or more easily disposed of. I didn't let my gaze linger. A flicker of interest could be mistaken for weakness or worse. Affection. My father did not speak. He did not need to. He simply looked at me, drinking in every gesture, every twitch of muscle, every move I made, just like he had my entire life. I took 3 steps forward and stopped at the bottom of the dais. My hands curled at my sides. He rose from his throne. Even after all these years, the simple motion of his body set the room on edge. His robes fell perfectly, untouched by dust or blood or remorse. The crown on his head was subtle, only a gleam of obsidian above his brow. He stood there, considering me. The guards tensed as one, as if bracing for a command. I kept my gaze locked on him, refusing to look away from the man everyone feared. There was something different today, some subtle disturbance in the dark water of his soul. I had expected rage, the icy chill of it. Instead, I found him. Serene, I waited. Just as I'd been taught, absolute stillness, absolute obedience, absolute readiness to be destroyed or spared as the moment required. Vala. His voice was almost gentle. I nearly shivered at the sound of it. Instead, I straightened my spine and braced for the storm I knew had to be coming. Yes, Father, I replied. He smiled, just a flash of one. The guards shifted. The world seemed to tilt, just a little. I kept my eyes locked on his and waited for him to speak again, or to strike me down where I stood. He folded his hands before him, fingers laced. You know what I value most, Vala? Above power, above knowledge, above victory itself, loyalty. Tell me, he leaned forward, do you think you have been loyal to me? Asterisk, I answered before I could think better of it. I put my life on the line every time we execute a plan, Daddy. I always have. Of course I'm loyal. He inclined his head, acknowledging the answer. So you say, but why, Vala? Why do you have such unthinking devotion? I bit the inside of my cheek, hard. The question caught me off guard. Why? Because it was expected of me. Because to be anything less than perfect was to invite ruin. Because love in this house was not a birthright, but a prize to be won through obedience and pain. Because the alternative was to be like my mother, disregarded, discarded, despised. I wanted his attention, and not the beatings, but those moments when he would tell me how proud he was of me. I craved it. I needed it to keep me going. I gave him the answer he wanted. Because you are my father and I am your firstborn, your legacy, I want to carry your will on with me. He began to pace, slow and deliberate, his robes scraping across the floor as he moved. You have always been my favorite. You have always been willing to bleed for me. Die for me, if it comes to that. He stepped around to face me. This felt like the clash of predator and prey, though I could not have said which was which anymore. Would you, Vala? He asked. Would you die for my cause? The question was rhetorical. The answer was already written in every scar, every piece of me I'd surrendered over the years. If there was any doubt left in me, it was a tiny, stubborn ember buried deep where he couldn't see it. Yes, I said. I would die for your cause. Good, he said as he let out a sigh. Soft as a lullaby. Then he pulled the dagger from his sleeve. I saw the flash of steel, the shimmer of a ruby. For one incredulous moment, I thought it ceremonial, a threat meant to scare me into submission. But my father was not a man for empty gestures. He drove the dagger into my gut. The pain was immediate, blinding, an agony so pure I nearly blacked out on my feet. I gasped a pathetic, animalistic sound and staggered backward. My hands flew to the wound, warm blood spurting between my fingers. I wanted to curse him, to scream, but I could only gape, uncomprehending. He watched me, impassive, as I stumbled. My legs buckled, and I went to my knees. The guards didn't react. They stood still, as if this were all part of a script they'd rehearsed 1,000 times. Father crouched to my level, his face inches from mine. I'm sorry, Princess, he said. And for a moment, I almost believed he meant it. But your sacrifice will keep my mind and body safe. I'll be sure to keep you around to do all my bidding still, but now you'll be tied to my will. That blade was enchanted with a soul sacrifice. A little trick I learned when I invaded the Library of Knowledge some years back. He paused, savoring my shock. My vision tunneled, my fingers slick with my own blood. But I could not look away. It is a ritual most profane, he went on, linking another's soul to an object of one's own, thereby rendering the victim a husk, devoid of will, enslaved to the whims of their murderer. But I think you will appreciate this, fella. You've always done what you're told. Now, not only are you protecting me by giving your life, you'll be a force to be reckoned with. You won't feel anything anymore. I've set you free. He stood, and for a moment the world swam. I felt lightheaded but also hollow. Like something fundamental was being scooped out of me. I tried to struggle, to grab him, but my limbs had gone numb, blood running in hot, sticky rivers down my thighs. My father watched, his face composed, kind even. Asterisk, you have always been the best of my children, he said. And now you will be my shield. I wanted to cry. I wanted to beg, to demand answers, but all that came out was a strangled, wet noise. My hands scrabbled at the marble, at the air, at nothing. I was so tired, so cold. Somewhere in the blur, I heard my father dismiss the guards, heard the click of the door closing behind them. The last thing I saw before darkness crashed over me was his empty smile that my body was dying, but my mind would not follow it into the void. I hovered above myself, watching as the blood spilled, as my father stood over me, as the world blurred at the edges and began to fold inward like burned paper. He spoke, and it sounded far away, muffled by the rush of my own fading heartbeat. I tried to scream or cry or even laugh. Nothing moved. The pain in my belly was fire and ice, but I sensed it already fading thanks to the magic coursing through my veins. He placed a hand on my forehead. Rest, daughter. Your service is just beginning. All these years, I fooled myself into thinking I was free in my own way, that I was clever, that my loyalty was a weapon of my own, that I was different from the others because I chose to serve. I thought that was power. I thought he loved me for it. That maybe on some rare day, he would put his hand on my shoulder and say, "Well done, Vala," and actually mean it. But here, on the cold floor of his throne room, I finally understood. I had never been anything but a tool, a means to an end. Not the cherished daughter, not the clever tactician, not even a worthy heir because I was a woman. Just a pawn to be sacrificed and used. A sick fucking joke. A sob caught in my throat and nearly choked me. I remembered my mother's voice, soft, tired, always gentle, even when I disappointed her. She had never believed in my father's ways of cruelty, never understood how anyone could hurt their own child and call it love. I'd hated her for her weakness, for the way she let father break her down, day after day, until she'd been only a ghost drifting through the halls and trembling at the sound of his footsteps. Asterisk. But now, as my body burned from the inside out, I wanted her more than anything. I wanted her arms, her lullabies, the smell of her when she would sneak into my room and check on me at night before crawling into my bed. I wanted her to say it would be all right. I wanted to beg forgiveness for every time I'd chosen my father's praise over her safety, every time I'd looked the other way or enforced his will, or shut her out with a locked door and cruel words. And my brothers. I wanted my Kate and Rhett, but it was too late. The numbness spread, stealing my pain and regret and everything else. My pulse slowed, then skipped, then stilled altogether. I was dead. I could see the blood, the slack jaw, my eyes still open but blank and empty. I wanted to weep, but I had nobody left to do it with. I was a soul, a thought, a prisoner. I sensed my father standing over my corpse, wiping the dagger clean. He did not look at me. He could not see me, not with his eyes, but I knew he felt my presence, that he reveled in the knowledge of my imprisonment. To him, I was a thing, a possession. a legacy he could wield now without the inconvenience of my will. Suddenly, my body jerked, and I gasped in a long breath as I sat up. I was looking through my eyes but had no control over my actions. I tried to scream again, but the darkness in my head only drank my terror, savoring every drop dot and in that endless void. With nothing left to lose and no hope of anyone rescuing the cruel daughter of Valos, I realized my father had lied. I would never be free. I belonged to him forever. Asterisk. Chapter 12, Cade. The book slammed shut, dust billowing from its yellowed pages as I rubbed my bleary eyes. Weeks of research and still no solid answers on how to break whatever hold or enchantment someone might have used on Emmeline's mind. I had shuffled through every book in here and had come up empty-handed. And if it was that woman in the throne room that day, my shadows had searched high and low for her and hadn't been able to find her. I needed to dig deeper. My father had a war meeting that afternoon, so I decided to take the opportunity to sneak into his office and check for anything in there. I doubted I'd find anything, but it was worth a shot. He had that room enchanted so no one could wield him there, but I was sure I could get in without being noticed. I'd spent my whole life sneaking through this palace. My chair scraped against the floor as I got to my feet to head that direction. Slipping through the corridors, I let the darkness embrace me. Guards stood vigilant by my father's door. A slight nudge against a candelabra down the hall sent it toppling, the clatter diverting their attention long enough for me to glide past unseen. Once I was inside, I gently closed the door with the softest click dot my gaze swept across the room, over every meticulously placed object. I rifled through the drawers, finding nothing but mundane records and trinkets. Cursing under my breath, I sat in his chair, rubbing my palms over my eyes. I was so fucking tired of dead ends. I grabbed his desk to get to my feet when I felt something. A false bottom against my fingers, revealing a slender drawer nested beneath the top of his desk. My heart pounded in my ears. But I opened it quickly and withdrew the contents. A handful of books and a map, the latter depicting a ship crowned with a strange orb floating above it. Its purpose eluded me, and I needed to know why he wanted Emmeline alive. I set it aside, my focus narrowing on the texts, one on soul sacrifices. I'd never heard of such a thing. The other was on celestial phi. Flipping through the first, I absorbed the words with urgency because I didn't have much time. The book offered little I did not already know. A celestial phi could indeed warp your mind, bending them as easily as one might fold a sheet of parchment. Yet why would such a being aid my father? My mother, Rhett, and I shared their lineage, noticeable due to our affinity for shadows. But very few people knew where she was, and our power had been diluted by our father's bloodline. Sure, Vala, with her fire that she'd eventually honed into lightning, possessed power to rival many, but the subtler arts of darkness were ours alone. What could my father possibly have to command a celestial's obedience? Asterisk, the question wormed its way into my thoughts, gnawing at the certainty I held about my father's impenetrable mind. How had he erected such defenses that not even our kind could breach them? I barely noticed the soft thud as a map slid from between the pages of the book. It was intricately marked, lines converging and diverging, but one path had been traced with an urgent, jagged insistence. It led to a solitary point in the northern reaches of the Ember Mountains, a remote place. My eyes lingered on that deliberate mark, my mind racing. What compelled my father to send his men into such empty terrain? Could he have found some celestial phi to do his bidding? Was he protected from them as he was from my abilities? My mind circled back to that woman in the throne room again. I had never seen her before, and I hadn't seen her since. Everything about that night had been wrong. She'd had something to do with this. I just knew it. With a sense of dread tightening around my heart, I turned my attention to the next book. The leather cover was old, the the binding cracked. I skimmed through the pages, the words searing themselves into my understanding with sickening clarity. A soul could be offered, not to some god or otherworldly power, but as a shield for oneself. It was a ritual most profane, linking another's soul to an object of one's own, thereby rendering the victim a husk, devoid of will, enslaved to the whims of their murderer. The pieces of this puzzle began to click into place, each revelation more horrifying than the last dot. Could it be that my father had done the unthinkable? Had he sacrificed a celestial to render himself untouchable, even to us, his own kin? To protect his mind against my mother, or to guard against any future betrayal from me? It was a strategy as cunning as it was abhorrent. But in doing so, he would nullify one of our greatest strengths and would be on a more even playing field by only being able to use weapons and elemental bending. That had to be why my shadows couldn't do anything to him. The text suggested that the more powerful the soul, the stronger the enchantment. It would make sense for him to want a celestial, but was his plan to do this to Emmeline as well? She was the most powerful. Did he want her alive to sacrifice her and then bind to his will so she lost all sense of herself and he could use her against his enemies? Rage coursed under my skin at the thought. If that were the case, it meant my father would be able to wield the power of the Peacebringer. Fuck. I wouldn't let him get Emmeline. I kept reading until I found my next answer to my next question. How could we stop it? Pages fluttered in my haste, and then there it was. To sever the enchantment, we had to destroy the vessel or object that housed the tethered soul. My pulse hammered against my temples, my mind a mess of dread and determination. If my father had done this, he wouldn't just leave the object lying around. He wasn't stupid. He would probably have it on his person at all times. A ring or a weapon, maybe. My fingers trembled at the thought of trying to destroy something of his that he kept on him, but there was no time for hesitation. If it was keeping him safe from our powers, then I must find a way and then kill him quickly. Maybe I could end this before he invaded. I glanced through the window and noticed the dying light. The day had slipped between my fingers like sand. Shit, I was late. I needed to check on him today and bring him dinner. Maybe we could come up with a plan together. I shuffled the books back into their hidden drawer, my movements precise, leaving no trace of my intrusion. With one last sweeping glance to ensure everything appeared untouched, I slipped from my father's office. Ace needed me, but then maybe I'd be able to end this and get him out of there. My feet carried me swiftly through the winding corridors. Vala could have visited while I was away, inflicting who knew what torments on him. The thought made me blow out a breath. I was tired of watching him go through this, of seeing him in pain because of her, but week after week, he assured me he didn't want to go until I figured out why my father wanted Emmeline alive. Now that I thought I'd finally had something, I was a little hopeful for the first time in a long while. I burst into my chambers, memories of Emmeline flooding back. Her laughter when my shadows would play with her, our time together at the light festival, how I would catch the way her eyes would sparkle when she admired me from a distance. If only I could hold her, love her freely without the stand war tearing us apart. I shook myself. Going into the bathroom and reaching for the medical kit, I always kept prepared. My shadows writhed around me, feeding on my eagerness to get to the dungeon. The familiar peace of my hollow enveloped me as I stepped through. Moments later, I emerged in the dank cell where Ace was kept. My shadows probed the darkness, confirming we were alone before retreating completely. Chapter 13, Emmeline. I hastily shoved supplies into my pack and peered out into the sleeping rebellion camp. The air was thick with morning mist and dew, obscuring the rows of tents. Unlit campfires dotted the clearing, cold ashes left over from last night's dinner. My heart pounded as I slipped from my tent, praying to whatever gods might be listening that no one would try to stop me. I walked quietly until I was on the outskirts of camp, but then a twig snapped beneath my foot and I froze, hardly daring to breathe. When no shouts of alarm came, I pressed on, the trees swallowing me. I'd barely made it a dozen paces when a voice shattered the silence. "And just where do you think you're going?" I whirled around. Atreya stood before me, leaning casually against a gnarled tree. How long had she been there? I hadn't heard a single sound other than my own footsteps, not even a rustle of leaves. Her ability to move unseen never failed to unnerve me. "You two really are too similar, you and Ace." Atreya's voice was low. She pushed off from the tree, taking a step toward me. "But at least when you decide to make a stupid decision, you do it alone." I bristled at her words, my hands clenching into fists at my sides. Who was she to judge me? She didn't understand, couldn't possibly comprehend the burning need to act that consumed me. Maybe that was a selfish thought, considering the very life of this place was her responsibility. Atreya's piercing gaze pinned me in place as she continued. "So what exactly is your plan, Imoen?" "Take on Vala's armies at the gate, somehow get into Ember's palace without getting captured yourself, and save Ace." The way she laid it out made it sound impossible, foolish even. But I couldn't back down now. My chin lifted defiantly as I met her stare. "Yes," I responded plainly, my voice steadier than I felt inside. Atreya's eyebrows shot up, a mix of disbelief and grudging respect flashing across her face. For a moment, silence stretched between us. "I have to try," I finally whispered, my voice cracking slightly. "He's my brother, Atreya. I can't just sit here while he suffers anymore." Atreya's eyes narrowed, her lips pursing as she studied me. "I understand, Imoen, but do you know how foolish you sound?" "You are what they want." Her words were cut off abruptly, the air around us suddenly thick with an unnatural silence. The hairs on the back of my neck stood on end as I sensed a familiar presence materializing behind me. Kate's hollow. I whirled around, my heart hammering against my ribs. Shadows rolled off Kate's frame, writhing and coiling around him like living smoke. My emotions warred within me. Part of me longed to throw myself into his arms, seeking comfort in his embrace. It had been so long since I'd seen him. But another part wanted to lash out, to make him hurt as much as his lies had hurt me. All those conflicting feelings evaporated in an instant as my eyes locked onto the figure cradled in Kate's arms. Ace. I breathed up. My brother lay limp and unmoving, his skin ashen where it wasn't marred by burns, bruises, or cuts. So much blood stained his tattered clothing. My stomach lurched, bile rising in my throat as I took in the full extent of his injuries. "No," I choked out, stumbling forward. My legs gave out, and I fell to my knees beside Cade as he lowered him to the ground, my trembling hands hovering over Ace's battered body. "What happened?" I demanded, tearing my gaze away from Ace to glare at Cade. Why didn't you?" The questions tangled on my tongue. My eyes darted back to Ace, and that was when I noticed something terribly wrong. Where his magnificent wings should have been, there was nothing but torn flesh and exposed bone. His wings. I sobbed, horror clawing at my insides. "They're gone." Another promise broken because Ace wasn't safe. He was on death's door. Rage and grief collided within me, a wave of emotion that manifested in a violent gust of wind. It slammed into Cade, sending him flying backward into a tree with a sickening thud. I lunged forward, gathering Ace's broken body into my arms. His skin was so hot. He was burning up. "Brother," I whispered, cradling him against my chest. My fingers traced the ragged stumps where his wings had been, and I felt something inside me shatter. Ace had always been so proud of his wings. They were a symbol of his power, his freedom, his people. Now they were gone. They may grow back, But it didn't change the fact that the wings that had carried him his entire life had been destroyed. The only thing left of them were the feathers in my and his hair. "I'm sorry," I choked out, rocking him gently. "I'm so sorry." Behind me, I heard Cade groan as he struggled to sit up. The mated part of me felt the need to check on him, make sure he wasn't seriously injured. But I couldn't bring myself to care. I shoved my walls up in my mind to cut myself completely off from him until I was ready. All that mattered right now was tears cascaded down my cheeks, blurring my vision. My hands began to glow with a soft blue light. I pressed them against his bloodied chest, willing my power to flow into him to mend what had been broken, which seemed to be fucking everything. But as the seconds ticked by, dread settled in my gut. His wounds were catastrophic, far beyond anything I'd ever attempted to heal before. This wasn't a simple matter of knitting flesh and bone. Ace's very life was slipping away, trickling through my fingers like sand. It would take days, maybe even weeks of healing to bring him back from this. But he was my brother, and I knew he was resilient. Footsteps pounded behind me, followed by a blood-curdling scream that sent shivers down my spine. Luana, she threw herself down on Ace's other side, her face a mask of horror and anguish. "Oh gods," she choked out, reaching out with unsteady hands to touch his face. "Ace, my love." A sob tore from her throat as her gaze traveled over his battered body. I saw the exact moment she realized his wings were gone. Her eyes widened in shock, then crumpling in devastating grief. Luana wept, leaning over him, pressing her forehead to his. I tore my gaze away from Ace, my hands never ceasing their healing motions. My eyes locked onto Cade, still slumped against the tree where I'd thrown him. Tears glistened in his eyes as he watched me. The sight of his pain ignited an inferno of rage within me. How dare he look so devastated when this was his fault? He had left him there too long. If he would have just listened to me when I told him to bring Ace back, this would have never happened. "How could you?" I screamed. The words ripped from my throat. "You promised. You promised me you would keep him safe." "Lies," I spat, choking on the bitter taste of betrayal. "All of you," Cade flinched as if I'd struck him, his broad shoulders hunching inward. "Emmeline, he began, his deep voice cracking. But I couldn't bear to hear his excuses. Not now. Not with Ace's life hanging by a thread. I turned back to my brother, pouring every ounce of my being into my powers to heal him. "We need to get him in a tent," I said to Luana, trying to regain some of my composure. "Lashing out wouldn't help Ace right now, and we need to get a fire going. I'll need towels and hot water to wash him. Can you help me?" I asked, trying to make my words gentler toward her. She nodded, and instantly I felt the earth shift beneath us as Luana bent it, supporting Ace in a makeshift bed of soil and stone. The ground rippled, carrying us back toward the camp. My healing hands never left Ace's skin. Chapter 14, Cade, is at with my back against the tree, feeling its rough bark dig into my spine. Atreya's footsteps crunched through the fallen leaves as she approached. She extended her hand to help me up. I ignored it, pushing myself to my feet. I turned my back to her, unable to meet her gaze. The gears in her head were already moving, thinking of what to do next. "Cade?" Atreya's voice was honey-sweet. "I know how hard this must be for you, but you have to go back. It will be morning soon. We will take care of Ace, but you'll need to make an appearance at the palace and make sure you get your alibi together for when Val realizes he's gone." It was almost laughable how right I'd been about her. She hadn't always been like this. Always plotting, always scheming. My fists clenched at my sides. How dare she speak of Ace so casually? As if he were just another casualty of war? And Emmeline? Gods, The hurt and betrayal in her eyes would haunt me the rest of my life. What had I become in my quest to protect her? A liar, a traitor, a monster? No, the word escaped my lips, barely a whisper. This wasn't just about refusing an order. It was about reclaiming my soul. The shadows around us seemed to deepen. What? Atreya asked, dumbfounded. I glanced over my shoulder to look at her, and the shock in her eyes quickly morphed into something harder, more dangerous. I felt my jaw clench, my fists tightening at my sides. I said no, I growled, my voice rising with each word. I spun to face her fully, shadows coiling around my feet like restless serpents. It felt good to not have to cage them here. At the palace, I always had to be careful and keep them locked down as I stared into Atreya's cold, calculating eyes. Memories flooded my mind. The day I'd agreed to join her rebellion, thinking only of Emmelin's safety. How, over time, the cause had seeped into my bones, the desire to end this senseless war becoming as vital as protecting my mate. I tried to balance both, to be the perfect spy while safeguarding Emmeline from a distance. But in doing so, I'd lost sight of what truly mattered. Her. I'm not going to be your spy anymore, Atreya. Emmeline is here, and she's the only reason I ever started this madness. It's gone too far. I took a step closer, shadows writhing around me. I have done everything you've ever asked of me. I've spied, killed, tortured. I've kept your secrets. My voice cracked, but I pushed on. But I am done. No more. I'm not going back. Asterisk, her voice cut through the tension. When all of this started, you knew it was going to be difficult and that we would have to make sacrifices, whatever it took, remember? Her words ignited a fire within me, burning away the last shreds of my loyalty to her cause. And that was my mistake, I snarled, my voice dripping with venom. I lost sight of why I did this to begin with. I paused, the weight of my failures crushing down on me. I did this for her, not you or anyone else. I wanted to give her a peaceful world. I refused to sacrifice her any further. And now I'm afraid it may be too late for me because you saw the way she looked at me. You saw what condition Ace was in. I listened to you a little too long, kept my distance, and Vala got her. Luckily, I got her away from there. No thanks to your commands, but she was still tormented. I swallowed hard, forcing down the lump in my throat. The words continued to pour out of me. And then she was in the fucking palace, and every day I was there, I had to lie to her. Every day, I would feel the panic of having her so close to my father, to Vala, to the monsters that made me. She had to fight in the ring and ended up killing a sky elf, and I watched how that broke her too. I felt the burn of betrayal down our bond in my chest because of my lies when I finally told her the truth. And then I continued to listen to you. And it has almost cost her the only person she has left. The rage and anguish I'd been holding back finally exploded out of me. I am done. I roared, my shadows erupting around me in a maelstrom of darkness. Atreya's eyes flashed, and I thought she might back down, but she didn't. No. We are too close to the end of all of this for you to fuck it all up. Those are all the sacrifices that have been made to make it to where we are now. Why can't you see that? She seethed, and her words felt like a slap in the face. You're no different than him, I hissed, surging forward until we were nose to nose. My voice was barely above a whisper, but it carried the weight of years of pain. Pain she fully understood. Pain I'd watched her go through. Atreya blinked, her mouth fallen open. For a fleeting moment, I saw the hurt flash in her eyes, saw her impenetrable armor crack. My words had found their mark, piercing straight through to her core, but it was gone in an instant, her stern exterior snapping back into place like a shield. I watched her swallow hard, steeling herself against my words. How had I never seen it before? The similarities between her and my father were suddenly glaringly obvious. Both of them were willing to sacrifice anything, anyone for their cause. One for power, one for vengeance. A dark shape materialized from the shadows. It was Rhett, stumbling out of his hollow with eyes wide and hair disheveled. "Whoa, what the fuck is going on?" he demanded, striding toward us, dotted TRE. Wyatt cleared the emotion from her throat, breaking the tense silence. "Just discussing what to do next," she said, her voice carefully controlled. But I could hear the slight tremor beneath her calm facade. "I'm not going back," I declared. I met Rhett's eyes. "I can't do it anymore." Rhett's expression softened, a flicker of sadness passing over his features. He didn't ask why. He didn't need to. All those nights we'd spent talking mind to mind, sharing our doubts, our fears, our growing disappointments, they'd led to this moment. I waited for his response. Would he try to stop me? Change my mind? The thought of my little brother not being on my side made me sick to my stomach. But Rhett just nodded slowly, a look of understanding in his eyes. "Okay," he said, his voice steely. "I'll take your place." Beside me, Atreya stiffened, her sharp intake of breath mirroring my own shock. "What?" we exclaimed in unison. I stared at my brother, searching his face for any sign of jest, but finding none. "Have you lost your mind?" I hissed, grabbing his arm. "Do you have any idea what you're saying?" Rhett met my gaze. "I know exactly what I'm saying, brother. You've carried this burden long enough. Let me shoulder it now." He spoke matter-of-factly, like this had always been a thought in the back of his mind, till my throat tightened, a mix of gratitude and guilt threatening to choke me. "Rhett, I can't ask you to..." He cut me off. "You're not asking. I'm offering. You deserve a chance at freedom, Cade, at happiness. I have watched you sacrifice your life for this cause. I will gladly take your place.